So we're back here and ready to begin the Battle of Nicopolis, 0930 turn. We have the lead formation of the Crusaders here, and we have the lead irregular units of the Ottomans and the Ottoman overall commander Bayezid with his main body here. So the Ottomans are the first player. Ottomans are the first player. Yes. And so we go right to the order phase. There'll be no changing of orders because I want to see how the historical orders will play out, at least to start with. But I am going to remember here that the Crusader heavy cavalry are going to plan on charging. So I'm reading from Crusader heavy cavalry units and the attack command. They have an attack command. So Jean-Pierre and his French heavy cavalry, they have an attack command. They plan on charging the Ottoman irregulars. So Crusader heavy cavalry do not have a reduced strength side. Instead, they have a non-charging and a charging side. When they're subject to an attack command, they may be flipped to their charging side if they successfully check morale during the initial command phase. So that's what we're going to do right now. We'll just go through and test each one. He needs a 7 or less because his printed morale is 7. Ooh, he does not charge, so he stays on his non-charging side. We'll test him over here. He does successfully charge, so I flip him to his charging side. Over here, he successfully charges and pure. So here, top to bottom, I'm going to roll the die and subtract 1 for the Jean-Pierre's presence. So 2, he easily passes to go into charging mode. And the final roll to 4 minus 1 for Jean-Pierre is easily a morale check pass. So 4 of the 5 French heavy cavalry knights successfully moved into charging mode. Charging Crusader heavy cavalry units that fail a morale check in melee, either during commitment or as a result of combat, are flipped to their non-charging side. They may only attempt to flip to the charging side again by making a morale check at the start of a command phase in which they are not in an enemy zone of control. If their leader changes his command to a command other than attack, the Crusader heavy cavalry unit is flipped to its non-charging side during the command phase. Exception: it does not flip if it is in an enemy ZOC. It does so instead at the start of the next turn in which it is not in an enemy ZOC and the leader's order is other than attack. Okay, so I think that's enough for now. This is the command phase. I want the heavy cavalry to charge when it comes around to that point in the sequence of play, but I have to do the morale checks at the start of the turn to start that charging process, so to speak. Okay, so no orders changes, so that is enough for the orders phase at turn 1. We go to the first player or Ottoman movement phase. First we check for out of command. Don't need to do that on the first turn. They all start in command. So we go to movement. Now, for the Ottomans, this rather large irregular force here, mounted and dismounted irregular force, they could hold back here and screen the main body, or they could move forward and start harassing the Crusader knights. As much fun as it would be to charge forward and start firing, I'm going to experiment here with holding back and screening the main body. Again, they do not. So real quickly, as a matter of fact, I'm going to move a few. The dismounted units here have a movement value of 4. The mounted have a movement value of 8. They don't have any facing, so they don't pay Don't pay any movement points to change facing. All of these skirmish units, they are considered to be facing the front in all 6 adjacent hexes. So bottom line is, for example, if I move him 1, 2, that's fine. There's no facing change or anything. You're just moving basically by whole hexes. So go 1, 2, go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1. Just go with that. So they'll screen the main body here. Now back to the stand. The main body has a stand command. Under a stand command, units can move 1 hex and 1 hex only. So they will start moving up. Stand command. Sipahi's back here. They'll just keep up the same. And we have so the Serbians are under a reserve command. The reserve command. All combat units in command using the reserve command chit may move up to their full movement allowance during the movement phase. They may never enter a hex that is closer to an enemy unit that is 5 hexes away. To determine this 5 hex range, count the enemy occupied hex, but not the hex to be entered by the friendly unit. Reserve combat units that begin a turn closer than 5 hexes to an enemy unit must, if they move, do so in such a way that at the end of the movement phase they are 5 or more hexes away from the closest enemy combat unit. Reserve combat units receive no melee combat die roll modifiers. So even though the Serbians are back here with a reserve order, they can move. They're just not going to move in any close proximity to enemy units. For now, I'll leave them put. So that is the Ottoman movement phase. Now we go to the Ottoman combat phase. Might as well do a quick check, although I don't think anybody is in range, but the way we do that, we have all these irregular forces. So the mounted skirmishers, there's a note underneath the unit type modifier table just to point it out. In the Nicopolis scenario, there are mounted bowmen who are designated as skirmishers. Those are these guys right here. For the purposes of the unit type modifier table, they count as bow cavalry. So that bow cavalry has its own column on the unit type modifier table, which we will get to when we get to our first melees. For fire, mounted bow is here. Range. Mounted bow fires out. Here's the range table. So we have foot bow units. Yeah, okay, so we have foot bow units like this. They fire out to a range of 3. And we have mounted bow that fire out to 2 hexes. In this scenario, that looks like all of these are all the ranged fire units that we're concerned about. As far as I can tell quickly, a quick scan of the battlefield tells me that that's the Crusaders do have, just real quickly, they do have their own dismounted bowmen as well. Transylvanian, that's Transylvanian, Transylvanian. we have a Transylvanian formation over here, in addition to the, we already saw the Wallachian force there. And, and the, okay, and the Crusaders also have mounted bowmen, but these are not skirmishers. They're part of a formation. They're part of Sigismund's main body formation. But yeah, he has mounted bowmen as well. Yep, mounted bowmen. Okay. All right. So nobody's in range. That was the bottom line for checking that. Our mounted bowmen have a range of 2. Our dismounted bowmen have a range of 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Nobody's in range, so there is no fire combat, and obviously nobody's adjacent, so we don't have to check for any melees. First player rally phase doesn't apply, and we do not start checking for victory until game turn 5. And anyways, there are no losses, so it doesn't really apply. Now we go to the Crusader half of the turn. So they do their movement phase. The 3 rear units all have reserve commands. Might as well do the French knights first. Well, everybody's in command, so now let's do our movement. The attack command, remember that all these French knights, heavy cavalry, they must move 1/2 of their movement, which in this case the charging units have a 7, so that's 3.5 rounded up to 4. A minimum of 1/2 their movement allowance rounded up, and they must end their turn closer to enemy units. So the charging units are just going to start trying to take out Ottoman units, but the knights are generally going to try to flank around and get after the Ottoman main body. I should just makes sense, since I'm starting to move charging cavalry, that we do a quick review about facing, about heavy cavalry. So exception. So a combat unit may change facing in any direction only during the movement phase and at the end of the combat phase if they took part in melee combat. If a combat unit wishes to change facing without moving from the hex it is in, it may do so. Exception. Crusader heavy cavalry units that are charging may not change facing except at the end of the combat phase. That kind of makes sense. Non-charging Crusader heavy cavalry units may change facing. So that is relevant. I can't do some fancy maneuvering over here. These guys have already switched to their charging side. They are charging. They can't do any facing changes other than at the end of melee. So they have to just charge straight forward. 1, 2, 3. They enter an enemy Zoc. Actually, combat units exert zones of control. Leaders and skirmish units do not. That's interesting. So put that together with a unit must stop when it enters an enemy Zoc. That means that he doesn't have to stop here. So 1, 2, 3. Except that he'll. Well, he'll do it anyways. I mean, it will not be facing for melee, but it doesn't really matter. 1, 2, 3, 4. So he has moved 1/2 of his movement allowance rounded up. Oh, so he doesn't have to go in a straight line. He just, because units move into their frontal hexes, they cannot change facing. Combat units may only move through one of their frontal hexes. The first change of facing during the movement phase therefore is free. Each ensuing change costs 1 movement point. A unit may change facing at no cost and then move, but if it proceeds to change facing after that, it costs 1 movement point to do so. A change of facing through any number of hex sides within a single hex counts as a single change. Since skirmish units have no facing, they never pay such costs. Alright, so the charging heavy cavalry can still move in their frontal hex. So that tells me that he can go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, there we go. Because these skirmish units do not exert a Zoc. You only have to stop in your movement phase and move no further if you enter an enemy Zoc. I actually never realized that little nuance there. I don't know how little it is, but that nuance behind the rules. Huh. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4. He's going to stop there because he wants to sweep aside that one. Okay, so Jean Pure. 1, 2, 3, 3. Isn't that interesting? I mean, this is a lack of clarity here because he's supposed to move a minimum of half of his movement allowance. I guess it's probably under the orders rules actually. So when no, they don't. Another gap in such tersely written rules. That's interesting. So my point is, technically they need to move a minimum, well, they need to spend, wait a minute, yeah, spend a minimum of 4 movement points. But he went adjacent to a unit, but he didn't enter an enemy Zoc. I mean, are we to say that he has to move, or has to spend 1 more movement? That just doesn't make sense. So he's moving adjacent to a combat unit. I don't think he has to move again. So the non-charging knight will follow. All right, so the units with the attack command have moved. Get those out of the way. Now we'll handle the reserve units. We got our Transylvanians over here. So they can move no closer than 5 hexes. So they will stay well outside that, but it is okay, combat units. Combat units include skirmishers unless specifically mentioned, I guess. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Sigismund is actually going to hold here and see what happens. The Wallachians, though, on the Crusader left, they can go ahead and advance. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. These are the Crusader infantry. Here we have some Crusader airborne. So the Wallachian are heavy cavalry too, because they have a charging side. So, and the translate. Okay, I thought it was only the French Crusaders who were heavy cavalry and eligible to charge. Actually, the Wallachian and the Transylvanian heavy cavalry are heavy cavalry as well. So, okay, so that's a lot of knights. All right, so Sigismund has some knights with him too. Okay. I thought the Crusaders didn't have that many knights at this battle, but I guess maybe it's a relative thing. All right, so all right, so that was the Crusader movement phase. No, Crusader combat phase. Oh yeah, we definitely have Alright, so we do it. Fire combat is done first, and defensive fire is done first, then offensive fire. So all of these defending Ottoman units here get to conduct their ranged attacks. It's going to be all over the, not all over the place, but quite a bit here. So we'll go through mounted bowmen. Try against. Yep. Can go against Jean-Pierre and his charging heavy cavalry there. So we have a mounted bow at 1 hex away is no modifier for range. Oh, but it's -1 if target is Crusader heavy cavalry. But I don't have a choice. It's all Crusader heavy cavalry here. So yeah, it's -1 to the fire table on all of this because all these targets are going to be Crusader heavy cavalry. So it's automatically -1, which means mounted bow, which means that I can only get. What that means is I can only get a at the most a morale check, right? So range table for my mounted bows is nil at range 1, -1 at range 2. And you go over to the fire table, mounted bow column down here. Morale checks start at 8. Normally it's morale check at 8, morale check at 9, 1 step loss at 10. However, fire table modifiers -1 if target is Crusader heavy cavalry. So the most, even if we roll a 10, it's modified down to a 9, which is a morale check. So really, I need a 9 or I need to roll a 9 or a 10. This is here. This is here to there. This is okay. Now we go to the foot bow. Again, because these skirmish units have no front, they can fire out any direction. So we'll start with this foot bow, firing at Jean-Pierre's stack. Is that 2 hexes away, which is nil, not enough. Go to this foot bow against the charging French cavalry there, and finally, no, his line of fire is blocked by the hex side here, occupied by a friendly unit or a combat unit. Alright, I think that's all the defensive fire. Now we go to offensive fire. Actually, none of these charging knights have fire capability, so there is no offensive fire. Now we're going to go right into our melees. Do our first melees. We're going to sweep from. Oh, actually, now I choose to do that melee first. Then we'll do this melee. Then we'll do this melee. All right. So do this melee first. First, the French charging heavy cavalry. Alright, so he is not charging just heavy cavalry, but he still has to commit. He commits, rolls a 3. That is equal to or less than his morale. Now, now we check for retreats before combat. Cavalry units, which have a retreat or stand command, that doesn't apply here because this is a skirmish unit. So now we go to the next rule. Skirmish units being attacked by cavalry units may retreat on a die roll of 8, 9, or 10. And actually, he is going to try to take that option to retreat this way. So he can retreat because he's a skirmish unit being attacked by a cavalry unit. If he rolls 8, 9, or 10, no, he rolls a 6. So it's not good enough to retreat before combat. So he is stuck in combat. Now he has to pass a morale test. Ooh, he fails his morale test. He rolled a 9. That was way over his morale of 6. So if they fail the morale check, they rout and retreat 3 hexes to their rear. Yeah, so right away he goes back 3 hexes. 1, 2, 3. Very liberal interpretation of to their rear, but I really don't see. I mean, I'm not doing that on purpose. I'm just, the rules just not entirely clear there, but he can retreat 3 hexes away from the enemy unit, so I'm going to allow that. I just allow that. Otherwise it gets too, I don't know, convoluted or something. Here, Jean-Pierre has to check for commitment. He's in. These ones I'm subtracting 1 for being stacked with a leader. So they're all in. All 3 of these heavy cavalry pass the morale checks. They're in. Here, the question is, can he even retreat? I don't think he can retreat into that. Cannot enter an enemy Zoc. So, and the rules say he may retreat before combat on a roll of 8, 9, or 10, which makes it sound to me that it's a choice, because it, enemy Zoc here, enemy Zoc here. Oh, let me make sure that skirmishers cannot retreat through other skirmishers. I think that's under stacking. Stacking restrictions. Okay, maybe not. Movement. Okay, I thought there was something on that. Skirmish units. Yeah. A combat unit may not move through another combat unit unless the combat unit moving is a skirmish unit. That's completely buried in the stacking rules, first paragraph. So is retreat movement? Is retreat movement? Is retreat movement? Let's back to the melee procedure. Skirmish units being attacked by cavalries may retreat on a roll of 8, 9, or 10. Again, that doesn't help because that makes it sound like it's retreat, not movement. So retreat. Is retreat movement? I can honestly say I'm not sure. So I will wow. Advance and retreat. Well, very unclear. I guess I'll say why would it not be treated as movement? Why would it not be treated as movement? All right, I'm going to go with that. I don't see it very clearly explained at all, but so it's a skirmish unit. It can move through another combat unit because it is a skirmish unit. Still has to roll roll the 1 anyways, so he's all of that for nothing in this case because he's not able to retreat before combat. So now he has to pass his own morale check. Passes, so he is in. So this is going to be pretty, wow, he's going to be wiped out. I'm almost sure because he's facing 3 charging heavy cavalry. So all right, so do the attacker first. We have 20, 32, 42, 44. That is almost off the chart. We have cavalry with an attack command +1. And we have a leader +2. Jean Pure has a +1, so that's +2. +2. Yeah, 7, 9. That's 2-step losses. So he is. I'll put this as a reminder. But he's a goner. But he does get to melee back with his 2 value. 2. He doesn't. Skirmish units don't benefit from any command chits, so it's just flat. Yeah, 6 on the 1 to 3 column is nothing. So he does not get a combat result back against the charging Crusader cavalry. They got 2-step losses against him. He's only a 1. Oh, I'm sorry, he's a 2-step unit, so actually it does matter. Oh, so it does matter. He just barely made it, actually. Just barely made 2-step losses. So the skirmish unit, I forgot that this is unusual where this is a 2-step skirmish unit. So 1-step loss, flip it over, 2-step losses, he's gone. Now we have to continue on. This is another thing that I don't remember being very clear, but I'm just going to go in order. However, well, see, the question is, he vacated. No, the hex was vacated. If all defending combat units vacate the hex, at least 1 attacking unit must advance. I'll just go ahead and advance Jean Pierre's stack. That is step 6 of the melee procedure. Step 7 is the second movement in melee, right, for the charging heavy cavalry. The question is, do I do that now as part of this whole melee procedure, or do I do it separately? In other words, do I finish this last morale and then go back to the charging cavalry. I'm gonna go with finishing the charging heavy cavalry now. I'm not sure what that does to, I don't know, play balance or whatever. So, step 7 of the melee procedure. Charging Crusader heavy cavalry, units that were attacking in advanced as per step 6, that's this right here, may now move up to 4 movement points. At the end of their movement, they may attack any enemy units in their frontal zones of control using the melee procedure. At the conclusion of this new combat, they do not receive further movement points. So so does he get to change facing at the end? I guess he does get to change facing at the end of that first melee. This one, well, that's interesting. Okay, so he goes 1, 2, 3. And then we have 2 new melees. Charging Crusader heavy cavalry that were attacking. Oh, and advanced. He didn't advance as per step 6. Only this one did. Okay. So there is only 1 melee. Okay, I guess that's how that works. Now we go to the second melee here. We go through the whole procedure again. I guess the attacker has to check morale again. I guess, why not? I don't see why not. So again, subtracting 1 for the leader, so they both pass. Now we have skirmish unit. Now we definitely want to try to retreat before melee. We'll have an 8, 9, or 10. You got a 10. So he gets to may retreat on a die roll of 8, 9, or 10. So 1, 2. And so go back to the charging cavalry. The attacker must then advance at least 1 unit into the vacated hex. Yeah, I guess that's it, and then it's over, as I understand it. Okay. Back here, the charging heavy cavalry pass. Try to retreat before combat. He rolls a 5. He's not able to, so he must check morale. He passes. He rolled a 4. His morale is 6, so he stands. Now we go to melee resolution. We have 12 Crusader heavy cavalry combat factors, combat strength. We have +1 for cavalry with an attack command. I think that's it, though. That is it. Okay, so +1 for cavalry with attack command. Ooh, you rolled a 1. +1 is no effect. The well, the Ottomans with a 4 didn't get anything either. So that was nothing. Yeah, there we go. So that's the Crusader melee phase. Now we go to the rally phase. There are no rallies for the Crusaders, and there's no checking for victories. So that is the end of the first turn. Go ahead and advance it to the 1000 turn, but leave it, leave everything right here, and pick this up again another time.